It was supposed to be a happy day. Colorful balloons, birthday cake, a little girl turning 8. But in just a few hours, what was supposed to be a celebration turned into a real nightmare. For 48 hours, Midsi Sanchez lived in hell, in the same region where Amber Swartz-Garcia and Xiana Fairchild disappeared without a trace. Midsi also disappeared, and the community already feared the worst. Had the same predator acted again? Who was the man who took her? What did he want? And most importantly, how did a child of just 8 years old manage to escape from a monster? What you will see in this video is more than a police case. It is a journey of terror, courage, and redemption. But what Midsi saw during her captivity will shock you, and the way she escaped is something that not even the investigators could believe. What if her kidnapper left a key behind? Would you know what to do? But before I tell you, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the best crime videos. For more than a decade, Northern California lived under the shadow of a silent fear. In quiet and seemingly safe neighborhoods, girls disappeared without a trace. The case of Amber Swartz-Garcia, kidnapped in 1988 from her own backyard, shocked the community, and despite intense searches, no concrete clues were found. Time passed, but not the fear. Years later, in 1999, the disappearance of little Xiana Fairchild, just 7 years old, rekindled the worst fears. Just like Amber, she simply vanished, and the similarity between the cases was disturbing. Innocent children, always very young, taken in broad daylight. Could it be the work of the same kidnapper, a serial predator on the loose for more than 10 years? The authorities were frustrated, the families were destroyed, and the residents terrified by the idea that a cunning and cruel criminal could be roaming freely, coldly chose their next victim. It was in this tense atmosphere that, in August 2000, another child disappeared. But this time, something would be different. Midsi Sanchez, a little girl with a strong spirit and a keen eye, was about to write a new chapter in this story, a chapter that no one expected, and that would change everything. It was August 10th, 2000, in Vallejo, California. The sky was clear, and the summer breeze was blowing lightly. For Midsi Sanchez, that was a special day. She had just turned 8. After school, she decided to do something simple, something she did often, walk home alone. But that afternoon, the walk of a few blocks would become a nightmare that would mark her life forever. As she walked down the sidewalk, a man in a car approached. He seemed rushed, nervous. He said he needed help delivering a gift to his nephew. He used a persuasive tone, but forced sympathy. Midsi, hesitant, tried to refuse, but the man insisted, saying it was just around the corner. What could an 8-year-old do when faced with an insistent adult? It was at this point that Curtis Dean Anderson, a former taxi driver with a history of violent crimes and erratic behavior, took advantage of Midsi's vulnerability. As she approached the car, he pulled her out hard and locked the door. Within seconds, she was trapped. He drove for miles with the girl in the back seat, bound and gagged. At this point, Midsi still couldn't grasp the gravity of what was happening, but she would soon find out. Curtis took Midsi to a simple, secluded motel where the cycle of abuse and terror began. He kept her locked up, with her hands and feet bound with makeshift handcuffs. He told her that no one would come looking for her. He tried to destabilize her emotionally, alternating between moments of rage and attempts at friendly conversation. For the next 48 hours, Midsi lived through hell. She was physically and verbally abused. She could barely sleep. I was hungry, thirsty, afraid. The man seemed unstable, talking to himself, sometimes laughing, sometimes shouting. But even in the face of pain and constant threat, Midsi kept her mind alert. She observed everything, the routes, the objects in the car, the kidnapper's habits. Even though she was terrified, she knew that her survival depended on it. Curtis, in a moment of carelessness, left a set of keys in the glove compartment. He didn't realize how alert Midsi was. She didn't know it yet, but that key would be her only chance. Meanwhile, her family and neighbors were already desperate. The police began an immediate search, fearing that she had been yet another victim of the same predator who had terrorized the region for years. But no one imagined that Midsi was still alive, and that, even in the midst of the chaos, she was already planning her escape. Soon after Midsi disappeared, her family raised the alarm. It was unusual for her to be late, especially on her own birthday. Vallejo police began searching immediately, distributing posters with her photo and knocking on doors. But few leads emerged in the first 24 hours. And, as with so many other missing child cases, time was of the essence. The anguish grew with each passing hour. Authorities checked neighbors, reviewed security camera footage when available, and checked records of sexual predators in the area. The recent memory of Amber and Xiana's cases was fresh in everyone's minds. Fear that Midsi was yet another victim of the same kidnapper sparked a desperate race for answers. While the community mobilized in search efforts, Midsi struggled to maintain her sanity. She didn't know exactly where she was, but she tried to memorize the sounds of the street, the cars that passed by, any detail that might give her a clue. Even tied up, she watched Curtis's behavior carefully, his schedule, his lapses, his quirks. Curtis Anderson was unpredictable. One moment he was speaking to her in an almost cordial manner, offering her water and saying that everything would be fine. The next, he was shouting, threatening, and becoming aggressive, a typical pattern of kidnappers with mental disorders and a history of violence. He seemed to live in a parallel reality, convinced that no one would ever catch him. Meanwhile, investigators began to consider the possibility of child trafficking, or even the involvement of someone the family knew. The first 36 hours were marked by frustration, unanswered phone calls, and clues that led nowhere. Witnesses said they had seen a dark car in the neighborhood, but no one had any precise information. And Midsi, even locked up, began to understand that her only chance of survival depended on herself. It was on the morning of the second day that something changed. And before we continue the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Curtis left the place where he was keeping the girl locked up to buy drinks and cigarettes. He was agitated, perhaps more confident, because he had managed to keep the girl without being discovered. Before leaving, she left Midsi tied up, as she always did, but she made one crucial mistake. She left a set of keys in the car. Midsi knew she wouldn't get another chance. With shaking hands, she tried to reach the glove compartment. Her arms were numb. Fear was paralyzing. Every second seemed like an eternity. When she finally got the keys, she began testing them with the improvised handcuffs. 1, 2, 3 tries. Nothing, until, on the fourth key, she heard a sharp click. The lock gave way, but there was still another challenge. The car door. She pushed hard and ran out, barefoot, desperate. Curtis had left the car badly parked next to a busy road. She ran without looking back, and then a sound. He was coming, screaming, running after her. But Midsi didn't stop. In an act of impressive courage, she ran out onto the road and threw herself in front of a passing truck. The driver braked abruptly. When he saw the girl crying, with her wrists injured, he knew immediately that something was very wrong. He opened the door and pulled her into the vehicle. Curtis, realizing that he had lost control of the situation, fled. But Midsi, even in a state of shock, had the clarity to provide crucial information. She had memorized part of the license plate of the car and knew exactly what Curtis looked like. While she was being taken to the police station, police teams quickly cross-referenced the information provided with vehicle registration and criminal records. And so, less than 24 hours after the escape, Curtis Dean Anderson was located and arrested. But Curtis's arrest was only the beginning of a new phase, that of unraveling the man's dark past. Who was he really, and what else had he done? Curtis Dean Anderson's arrest was not just the outcome of a kidnapping. It opened a door to what seemed like a labyrinth of forgotten crimes and unanswered questions. His name, until then little known, would soon become synonymous with fear for the families of the missing victims. During the interrogations, Curtis appeared arrogant, confident, and at times even mocking. But over time, he began to talk more than he should have. In a confusing way, he gave clues about other crimes, and then came the revelation that shocked the police. He claimed to have been responsible for the disappearance of Xiana Fairchild, the 7-year-old girl who had disappeared the previous year, also in the Vallejo area. Initially, his statements were treated with skepticism, but as details emerged, named locations, times, methods, the veracity of his confessions began to be confirmed. Anderson accurately described the type of clothing Xiana was wearing. the place where he had approached her, and even where he had abandoned the body. In December 2001, Xiana's remains were found in a wooded area east of San Francisco. Police confirmed that Curtis Anderson was the predator everyone feared, but the most powerful twist in this story would come from someone unexpected. Midsi, the girl, now 9 years old, agreed to go to court to testify against her kidnapper, sitting before judges, lawyers, and journalists. She described every moment of her captivity with clarity and conviction. She spoke of the car, the motel, and the key she used to escape. She identified Curtis with conviction, without hesitation, even though she was face to face with the man who had tried to destroy her life. It was an emblematic moment. The physical fragility of a child contrasted with a rare emotional strength. This was not just a testimony, it was an act of resistance, justice, and transformation. Based on her testimony, plus the evidence gathered, and Curtis's partial confessions, he was convicted of multiple crimes including kidnapping, sexual abuse, false imprisonment, and murder. The sentence was harsh. 251 years in prison, a symbolic number that reflected the extent of his crimes and the desire of the courts that he never return to society. Anderson's conviction brought some relief to the families of other victims and marked the end of investigations that, for years, seemed destined to be forgotten. But for Midsi, the end of the judicial process was only the beginning of another challenge, rebuilding her own life, even after being rescued. Midsi Sanchez's life was far from returning to normal. The experience left deep scars. In addition to the psychological trauma, she suffered from stigma. Schoolmates treated her cruelly, calling her a kidnapped girl, or insinuating that she had done something to deserve what happened. For a child, carrying this weight was devastating. During her adolescence, she faced identity crises, depression, and periods of isolation. But little by little, she found a way to transform her pain into purpose. She founded an organization dedicated to supporting families of missing children and survived yet another tragedy, a serious car accident that nearly took her life. It was at that moment, already hospitalized, that she discovered she was pregnant. Motherhood gave her a new reason to move forward. Today, Midsi is an active voice in the fight against child abuse and the disappearance of minors. Her story is not just about survival, it is about resilience, about how an 8-year-old girl faced evil, escaped captivity, and became a symbol of strength and hope for thousands of people. If this story touched you, share the video. Every view helps give a voice to survivors like Midsi. And remember, listening, welcoming, and taking action can save lives. Until the next case.